most disturbing lost video games. Okay.
Rape Day was an indie visual
What day? What type of game are we trying to get across right here? Is this like a older type of GTA or something? What is R-Word Day?
novel that was developed by a user named Desplant, whose real name was Jake. The game was planned for an April 2019 release on Steam. The game puts you in control of a sociopathic serial killer during a zombie apocalypse, but judging by the game's horrific name, this wouldn't be its main plot. It would be centered around harassing, and killing different women.
I'm starting to understand why this game didn't get put out, because that would probably be illegal.
There's dialogue choices. It had over 7,000 words and 500 finished rendered images, and a full content warning on its Steam page. The creator Desplant openly marketed the game toward what he called a niche audience.
Isn't this game also like CP2? Like, you would have EDP playing this because you are like killing and R-wording kids in this?
According to his words, the game was meant for the 4% of the population that were sociopaths, as he would frame it as a dark comedy inspired by horror novels and psychological.
This is not a dark comedy. That has nothing to do with comedy. You are straight up R-wording people. Like, I don't understand why people always try to say it's comedy. Like, you gotta be a cornball to watch this type of stuff.
Thrillers. Steam had been operating under a pretty loose content policy at the time, as they even publicly stated in 2018 that they'd basically allow almost anything that wasn't illegal or quote straight up trolling. The game sat visible on the platform for 3 weeks, and at some point even becoming one of the most searched Steam games on Google.
Yeah, it's probably searched by every person that's like a EDP on the internet. And who would want to play this? Like, what is your guys' target audience? Like EDPs?
As well as during development, the game would also allegedly include a scene involving a baby being killed.
A baby being what? You are R-wording a baby in a game. That's kind of messed up.
But would eventually remove it, specifically because he was worried about being labeled as a child exploiter. And almost overnight, Rape Day would become the most hated game on the platform. Many petitions went up on change.org almost immediately, one alone pulling over 100,000 signatures.
This explains a lot about old Steam. Like, you should not have to put up a poll online to get a game removed. I feel like it's just common knowledge. You should not put like a R-word game out there.
Landing it as the 4th most signed gaming petition on the entire site, as it wasn't just regular people either. British MP Hannah Bardell and Scottish Parliament member Shona Robinson both went on record calling for the UK government to review how something like this even made it onto Steam, with all parties feeling as equally as disgusted and disturbed, and it only became a matter of time before Valve would respond. They would finally pull the game in March of 2019, but the way they did it also left a lot of people unsatisfied. Their official statement never condoned the content.
It poses unknown costs and risks. This is kind of messed up. Like, the game, like, how is that a unknown cost and risk? It should have been removed because of the types of content that they had in the game.
As they said, the game posed unknown costs and risks to their business and left it at that. The game was pulled only a month before its official release, so we could only assume the game was pretty much finished. No build or demo of the game has ever been released to the public, making it completely lost. But that would be until Desplant made his own statement, which left people even more confused and concerned than before. He would go on to call Steam a reactionary company, insisting their decision has nothing to do with any actual policy, and said he was already making plans to sell the game directly from his own website.
It's probably not a good idea to sell it from your own website, judging that Steam took it down and they had polls and the UK was debating about it. Like, honestly, if you make this game a thing, people are probably gonna like report you to the cops and you are gonna get like put in prison.
Even talked about reaching out to other developers whose games had also been banned from Steam to build some kind of separate platform for games that were too extreme to be sold anywhere mainstream. He would later backtrack from these statements, but would keep his word and would release the game. The game would be sold for a couple of days before being taken down for unknown reasons, but for the people who were dedicated enough at the time time did in fact get it. And if you weren't one of the few people who bought it, the game was deemed as pretty inaccessible to the public and was widely considered as partial lost media, but copies of the game would eventually resurface. The game's entire purpose was not only to offend, but was to see how far a developer could take his work before being taken down.
What I'm wondering is if there's anyone who has ever done a playthrough on this and like posted it on YouTube or anything, because they would probably get banned really quick.
The few reviews that I was able to find basically all said that the game was terrible, as Ray probably should have stayed lost. On April 26 of 2002, 19-year-old Robert Steinhauser walked into the Gutenberg Gymnasium wearing a ninja mask and carrying a 9mm pistol with some—
I swear if people try to say he killed everyone because of games, that is not true. I hate when like old people try to say that like a whole bunch of kids and stuff commit crimes because they saw it in like a game or a movie, because that is not true. I played like a lot of games. I played GTA and all of that, and I've never been inspired to do a crime from GTA.
Somewhere between 500 and 1,000 rounds of ammunition. He had been expelled from school just 2 months earlier for forging doctor signatures on his absent notes, and had been lying to his parents about still attending ever since. That morning, he told them he was going in to take his end of the year exams, but instead, he would move through the building room by room, teachers and staff with the idea of keeping students untouched. 13 staff members, the vice principal, along with 2 students who were struck when Robert fired through a locked door, also including a police officer who tried to enter the building, would be all shot and killed by Robert. Eventually, a history teacher managed to convince Robert into an empty room as he would shove him in and lock the door, where he would off himself shortly after.
Whenever someone offs herself after they like off a whole bunch of people, that's low-key sad, because you did all of that and then you offed yourself. Like, you can't even be put in jail. Like, at that point, like, what are they gonna do?
Known as the Erfurt School Massacre, and was deemed as one of the darkest days in modern German history. In the weeks that followed, investigators started piecing together who Robert was outside of school, wanting to know what exactly were his motives. But what they would also find was that he would spend a lot of his time gaming, specifically first-person shooters. His games of choice would be Counter-Strike, Half-Life, and most importantly, Doom.
Yeah, if it's Doom, who plays that? You were definitely the killer. That's what definitely inspired you to everybody.
Media in the 90s and early 2000s, and honestly even sometimes now, would blame violent video games for violent crimes, with many politicians arguing that interactive violence was more dangerous than anything on TV or film because the player was actively participating in it. And after the Columbine shooting in 1999, Doom would specifically get singled out because the shooters Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had been such huge fans of the game, as some media outlets would run with the story that the game had essentially been used as a training simulator to commit violent crimes.
I don't even understand how people play Doom. It's gotta be like, I don't even know, one of the most boring games out there. I tried playing it once. I think it's like Doom 64 on my Nintendo 64, and it was so bad.
The two would create custom levels for Doom, which were known as WADs, which stands for Where's All My Data, where players create and share their own maps, textures, and environments, and the modding community around it was massive. Robert, who was also a massive fan of Doom, had been rumored to have his own custom WADs for years. In a post on the Columbine High School Massacre discussion forum, where users were discussing Robert's history with first-person shooters.
I swear, I guarantee you that this man is going to have like a custom WAD of the school.
As some users would bring up that he had his own custom Doom levels, but nobody could deny or confirm if it was true or not. There were a few mentions of it online in different videos and Reddits, but nothing was ever concrete. That was until users would find a YouTuber named Cannibal Wolf who had actually recorded footage of the WAD at some point, but their channel has since long been deleted. A Reddit user mentioned that his friend had preserved his videos on a private Google Drive, and in June of 2023, all 94 of them were uploaded to the Internet Archive, and sitting in the collection would be a video titled Doom 2, Robert Steinhauser's Map.
What is it? Yeah, that's definitely a school. This man should have been locked up as soon as he started playing Doom.
The footage would be a little bit over 2 minutes long, and the level would be extremely bare bones and glitchy. This is the only known gameplay available online. The actual file has never been found, no archives nor copies have ever been found anywhere, and it's not quite certain how Cannibal Wolf had even obtained this in the first place. And unlike Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, where most of their WADs have been downloadable for decades, Robert's level is much more obscure, making it very unlikely that it will ever resurface.
What does his level have to do with anything? Like, I'm sorry, but what? Like, his level inspired him to go around and shoot a whole bunch of people or something?
On April 20th of 2009, a 99-cent game called Baby Shaker went live on the
Baby Shaker? I'm pretty sure this was like early TikTok trend.
iOS App Store. The game would show a drawing of a crying baby, requiring the user to shake their iPhone to, quote, quiet it down. And if you shake fast enough, 2 X marks would appear over the baby's eyes. Apple was known for having one of the strictest app review processes in the industry, as developers had been rejected for far less, including apps that were completely harmless. So imagine the surprise of users seeing an app that would pretty much simulate shaking a baby to death. The info and description of the game was, on a plane, on a bus, in a theater, babies are everywhere you don't want them to be. They're always distracting you from preparing for that big presentation at work with their incessant crying. Before Baby Shaker, there was nothing you could do about it.
What? Like, why do you have this app? Is the whole point you like shake it and then it dies?
See how long you can endure his or her adorable cries before you just have to find a way to quiet them down. Never ever shake a baby. The game was developed by a small studio called Sickalosoft.
If you shake a baby, will it die? I've never had a kid, and I hope I never will.
And somehow made it through Apple's review process without being flagged. The game would highlight shaken baby syndrome, which is the leading cause of fatal brain injuries in infants. The game would gain massive popularity almost instantly, as it only lasted 2 days before a site called Crabs wrote about it in an article the night it launched. And by the next morning, a founder of a shaken baby syndrome nonprofit named Jennifer Dickens had seen the article and sent it as a press release to over 30,000 media companies. Child advocate groups would also point that the app had gone live during Shaken Baby Syndrome Awareness Week and National Child Abuse Prevention Month.
That's messed up, bro. Y'all are making an app during all of that? During all like the awareness months and stuff? That's like literally making a like racist app during Black History Month.
Whether this was intentional from the developer is unknown, as despite the actual gameplay being pretty tame, the game in of itself and its content was extremely disturbing. Apple pulled the app within a day before briefly reappearing and then got taken down for good. Their spokesperson called it deeply offensive, as it should have never been approved, and even the developers admitted it was a bad idea. Gameplay fully exists online and is well documented. However, no build of the game has ever been released since then.
This game could probably easily be recreated, but I feel like someone would not recreate it because they are not trying to get canceled.
If someone still has it on their old iPhone, the game is likely gone.
Well, the wrestling world in shock today. Former champion Chris Benoit found dead in his Atlanta home along with his wife and young son. Police now treating the discovery as a double
R.I.P.
By 2007, SmackDown vs. Raw had built itself into the most premier wrestling game franchise on the market, and the 2008 installment was not only shaping up to be the biggest one yet, it actually became the highest selling wrestling game of all time, with over 7.3 to 7.9 million copies sold across multiple platforms. The developers, Yuke's, would introduce new features that would completely change how wrestling games even operated. For the first time, wrestlers were given actual mechanical differences that affected how you played the game, giving each wrestler a distinct identity in the ring. The wrestler Chris Benoit was one of the cornerstones of the game and was rumored to even be featured on the game's cover art. The 2-time world heavyweight champion and one of the most technically gifted wrestlers of his generation, his inclusion in the game was going to be huge.
Do y'all watch wrestling? Me personally, I do not watch it. I'm not gonna lie. I cannot find it like entertaining.
But only 5 months
like
before the game was supposed to be released, the developers would receive news that would make all of their hard work a complete liability. Benoit had missed a pay-per-view appearance in Houston with no warning and no explanation, which alone was enough to make many of his peers extremely worried. And what made the situation even more strange would be the bizarre text he would send to his friend and former wrestler Chavo Guerrero. He would send weird and unsettling messages about the back door being unlocked, and one that was nothing but his own home address. Without any context, all of these texts were completely nonsensical. Enough time had passed, and the authorities would show up to his house in Georgia, and what they would discover would change wrestling and the WWE forever. They would find his wife Nancy and his 7-year-old son Daniel both dead.
Dang, bro, how crazy do you have to be to like go in there and kill your own kids and stuff? I don't know if like he did it, but if all 3 of them are dead, I didn't get to that part, but that would be crazy. I'm pretty sure he did do it though, judging that it said both of his wife and kid were dead and it didn't say anything about him.
So discovering Benoit's lifeless body in the weight room.
Dang, bro, so he didn't do it, but that's actually crazy that like his whole family got killed.
Benoit had killed his wife Nancy first, strangling her with a cord. His 7-year-old son Daniel was found dead in his own bedroom, with reports later showing that he had been sedated beforehand. Benoit has spent the rest of the weekend in his house before hitting himself in the weight room on Monday.
So he did do it? I'm kind of lost right now. I don't know if he killed himself or if like a whole bunch of other people did.
After his death, researchers would examine Benoit's brain, and they would discover that Benoit has suffered from severe CTE, which was caused by years of repetitive head trauma, describing his brain as resembling an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient.
85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. That's like someone's grandpa, and this dude is like, I don't even know, like 40 or something, and he has that brain.
But the actual motive to his killings is still unclear. In the hours after the news broke, the company would air a 3-hour tribute episode dedicated to Benoit. But when the incredibly disturbing truth came out, that tribute episode would be buried. They would launch one of the most aggressive erase campaigns in the company's history, pulling him from TV, stripping his matches from DVDs, and wiping him from their website entirely, with, of course, SmackDown vs. Raw being next. His model, his voice work, and his movements all had to be removed while keeping the November release date intact. And despite its various delays, the game would come out on time. However, the removal of Benoit wasn't as clean as they may have thought. Players who would data mine into the game post-launch started finding his fingerprints all over the files. His crippler crossfade, which was his submission finisher, was still sitting there fully intact with its own animation, as players who would hack into the game could still fully use it.
Why is Freddy Krueger in the WWE? This just, what?
Pre-release builds with him fully intact are confirmed to exist somewhere. The game files or any of the builds are likely still deep in their archives, or maybe were even buried by them, as it's been almost 20 years since the game came out and nothing has ever been leaked, neither any build or alleged cover art of him included, making them completely lost. A Japanese doujin club called Girlfriend had been putting a series of hentai-based browser games that would be centered around popular anime female characters. The series would run from 1999 to 2005. It would use characters from series such as Crayon Shin-chan, Detective Conan, One Piece, and Ghost in a Shell.
They got my boy Luffy out there getting laid in some hentai. Not gonna lie, y'all might have to slide me the link to this one.
Player would have the option to rank the female characters that appear.
What? Never mind. Do not send me the link to that. I spoke a little bit too soon. I do not want to be playing as Luffy while I'm R-wording someone.
In the shows, as certain games would also have a necrophilia and function.
That's weird. You have necrophilia. Isn't that when you smash someone that's dead? And you have incest. That's like R-wording one of your cousins.
Much like the first entry, these games will be targeted towards a very specific and disturbing audience. And to understand why something like this even existed, a doujin club is a group of independent creators who self-publish their own work, manga, and art completely outside of any official publishing structure. The culture had been around since the 70s and 80s, largely built around Comic Market, a massive convention in Tokyo where creators sold their work directly to buyers with no publisher involved, copyright enforcement in that space was pretty much non-existent. And with platforms like DLSite emerging in the late 90s, creators could sell their work globally with zero content oversight, as this would open the door to some extremely dark material and explicit adult content based on anime characters. This scene had already been building long before Girlfriend even existed. The games were sold through Dojin storefronts like DLSite, which at the time had very little moderation. The person behind it went by the name Asagao, but beyond their username, almost nothing is known about who they are. The games ran for about 6 years. The owner would post an update saying the club's website was going down temporarily for a redesign, but this would be the last that we would ever hear from them.
So what happens to all of these websites? Do they just like, I don't even know, get taken down or banned or something? Like, I feel like there's got to be like some sort of like source code or whatever that you can like get into these websites somehow.
Site, including the games, have never came back. The games got pulled from every storefront they were listed on and have never returned since. The entire list of every game they've published are available on the Lost Media Wiki. A handful of the games have been recovered, but most of them are completely lost. A description for their most popular game, called Afternoon at Misae, reads as a simulation game based on the anime series Crayon Shin-chan. The game involves the player taking the role of a resident of the falling apartments and raping Misae Nohara, who lives next door.
What is up with all of these R-word games? I get that there's some weird people that like this stuff, but how? Like, what do you guys get out of this? You guys are weird.
Despite the series being lost for years at this point, there were some people who were still curious enough to try to hunt for them. The series would find its way to obscure Korean internet communities, as they would for some reason refer to it as a legendary night game. One of the members in this community would actually find the game in February of 2024. They would upload it to 2 separate sites and then would be deleted by the same person within hours, for reasons nobody has explained, as it hasn't been seen since and is very likely to never be seen again.
Alright YouTube, that's all for today's video. Make sure you guys subscribe down below. Subscribe to my main channel and my extras channel. Make sure you join the Discord down below too, and VL on top. And until next time, I'm out.